I had my neighbor who was a seamstress modify an old football girdle that I had from my college football days. I started wearing that to the gym, and some of the guys encouraged me to make more than just one. And we're able to double the business every year for the first 8 years. We'd go to CrossFit events and set up a card table, and we ran fulfillment out of our garage. Eventually, it took over the whole house. Last year, we were able to pay off $11 million of veteran medical bills on Veterans Day. Selling apparel is great, but we try to do our part to have a positive impact on society at the same time.
I want to just share your story. Tell us about the company that you own, and then maybe take us back in time to the idea, the inspiration. And I know your story in and of itself is going to be loaded with lessons. So let's just start there.
Perfect. Yeah. So I co-founded the company Born Primitive. We're an apparel brand. Started with workout and activewear, and we've expanded into a ton of different categories. We have performance footwear now, and jeans and flannels and tactical and hunting, outdoor, all kinds of categories that have done really well. But at the core of it, about 11 years ago, I came up with a pair of compression shorts that was very niche. It was specific for Olympic weightlifters. I came up with the idea. It was supposed to be one of one, a prototype that only I would wear because I didn't think anybody else needed it. So I had my neighbor who was a seamstress modify an old football girdle that I had from my college football days. And while me and her husband sipped a gin and tonic, she broke out the sewing machine and sewed up the first prototype and started wearing that to the gym. And some of the guys encouraged me to make more than just one. So I educated myself on supply chain, read a few books, and I eventually ordered 200 units. That was the minimum order quantity, which at the time seemed really big. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just coming off of a failed business before that I thought was going to go really well and went down the tubes. I guess I was dumb enough to not know any better to try again and did it. And a few months after starting it, I actually joined the service. So did just under 8 years in the Navy, was in the SEAL teams there. So not great timing. I wouldn't recommend anyone launch a business before starting something like that. And that would bring my spouse at the time, Mallory, into the mix pretty quickly. So she's a co-founder. We still run the business together. We have a great relationship. She's remarried, has 2 beautiful children. And so for her and I, for the first 6 years, basically, it was just me and her. We didn't make a penny on it. We reinvested everything back into the business. I think about 5.5 years in, she started taking the first salary. And I think at year 6, I started as well. So we were relying on a single income for 5.5 years and hustling. And we're able to double the business every year for the first 8 years. We'd go to CrossFit events and set up a card table, and we'd load up the Jeep and pack it as full as we could. We ran fulfillment out of our garage. Eventually, it took over the whole house, and everything was self-taught, every component of the business. And we've grown it now. It's a pretty significant business. We're a 9-figure brand. We have 110 employees. We're sold all over the world. We've expanded in all these other categories and building a brand new headquarters right down the street. That'll be a beautiful new building with all the bells and whistles here next year. We've come a long way. And the last thing I'm probably most proud of is we've been able to make a pretty significant impact on the charitable front. That's been something we've tried to do from the beginning. And although the numerical amounts weren't as big in the early days, we still committed to it. And just this last year, we were able to pay off $11 million of veteran medical bills on Veterans Day, right before Christmas, which was a huge thing. And we're going to try to do it even bigger this year. And we've donated a couple $1 million to charity as well beyond that. So I've been very fortunate to be able to build a platform thanks to having a really good team that allows us to actually have an impact and leverage that platform for doing some good. You know, selling apparel is great, but we're not curing cancer or anything like that. So we at least try to do our part to have a little bit of a positive impact on society at the same time.
My goodness, I'm sitting here. I love every guest that we have on. Everybody's story is so unique, and I actually think that's the part that I love the most is I never know who I'm going to talk to and how exciting it will be to hear what they've done. But I feel the energy and just the joy that your business has brought you and the impact you've made. Like it's the trifecta, right? Like you're making money, you're serving the community, and you're enjoying what you do. What more can you ask for? So I'm sure that was just super easy breezy, like no problems along the way, right? I mean, that's just how business ownership is.
Not so much. I always tell people it's about 99% of the time you're solving problems and the 1% is the highlight reel. You just got the highlight reel. It's always what it seems.
That's why we have shows like this, though, is to get into the stuff that's not on the highlight reel because we want to celebrate with you the success that you've had. This is what keeps us going. This is why, even though you had the one failed business or maybe multiple failed businesses, why we keep going, because we see people like you who are succeeding. We see them fulfill their dreams. We know that a lot of grit goes into it, but we need to keep that, I like to call it delusional confidence, alive. And so when we have people like you on the show, it gives us a good glimpse into the vision of what's possible. So I'm excited about this conversation. I'm excited to get into some of those problems that you engaged with along the way to help our listeners bend time, if possible, and avoid some of those pitfalls. Before we get into that, though, a few things. Is there significance in the $11 million? Because I know that Veterans Day is like 11/11, right? Is it always 11/11?
It is, and that actually
Okay.
was a coincidence. The amount was supposed to be 5 million that we were
Mm,
pledging. So we were pledging 100% of profits for 4 days, up to 5 million in debt that we were gonna pay off on behalf of veterans and specific to medical bills. Fortunately, it went a little viral. I was able to get on Fox News, and we had some celebrities that were really pumped about it and were just telling people about it. So we got an influx of people that were supporting
mm,
the cause. So when I came to work on Tuesday, I met with my brother, our CFO, and Mallory, our co-founder, and we said, "Hey, this went so well, it almost doesn't feel right to not up the amount." So we ended up doing another 5 million, and then I was on Fox again right before Black Friday, and I decided to add another million to it because they put us on for a quick little segment. So we ended up landing at 11, which was incredible. It was about 6,000 veterans. I got to speak to a bunch of them on the phone and like notify them of the news personally, which was kind of funny because most of them thought it wasn't real. And I had to be like, no, you can hang up on me, but it's actually real. You're going to get a letter in the mail in like 2 days. And some people
yeah.
were crying and talking about how much this was going to affect their life, and just a full circle moment to be able to have the platform and now the customer base, because when we
Mm.
do things like this, they get fired up to support the cause. And it's a win-win because I want to buy some new clothes and now it's guilt-free shopping. So why not come out and buy that pair of leggings or those shoes that I was waiting to get? Really cool thing. And we got even bigger plans this year. I actually was just in a planning meeting for it. And there's a lot of big things in the works to try to make it bigger this year.
That's amazing. And I just thought that significance was super cool. I love the number. I love numbers in general. So I wondered how much of that was the goal and how much it was just beautiful timing and everything lining up. Okay. So normally we start at the very beginning, work our way up. I want to meet you somewhere in the middle because you mentioned you didn't really take a profit for 6 years. What was the quantum leap? Because I think we have to address this. In business, it can feel like we're always going to be grinding. It's always going to be the grit. We're always going to be reinvesting. What did it take for you guys to quantum leap to where it was just like, okay, this went from us to gangbusters. Now we have 110 employees. We're a 9-figure company. Can you like pinpoint a certain thing that changed or shifted, or was it just a matter of momentum building? And what made that just soar?
For those that run businesses that require inventory vice a service, many can relate to this. Is you're always kicking the can down the road of actually making money because you always have to order the next batch of inventory, right? So your profits, let's say you make $1 million at the end of the year, is making up a number. You might have to spend 800 on inventory, so you only actually made 200. But then, hey, Uncle Sam taxes you on 1 million because you can't write off inventory until you sell it. So then you owe
Mm,
Uncle Sam a big check. So you have to hold on to that 200 that's left, and it's ironic because you think, oh, we just did 10 million in sales. And you're like, but wait, like, how is there not enough money to pay ourselves? Now, obviously you get to a point where there is cash available, but we wanted to just make sure we were putting everything back in. And again, it was kind of to fuel the inventory. So the irony is when you're growing at 100% and you're an owner, you actually, in that case, might actually make less money because
mm,
it's requiring more capital, right? If we were growing at 20% year over year, that might be a scenario where actually we make more money as owners, right?
mhm.
Now, there's ways to mitigate that. You can get a bigger line of credit, which we should have done, but we didn't know these things yet, right? So if you
Yeah.
don't have a line of credit, it has to come from your bank account. And so that's kind of how it was. We were just bootstrapping the whole thing. And it ultimately got to the point where we were like, okay, Mal, we can pay you like a 55K salary. And so we at least had dual income there. And then eventually, I think I came in 6 months later at the same salary. And then we
Mm,
were super modest with our own raises as well. We still are, actually. We've definitely done okay with it. But the real money in these scenarios is typically made during a liquidity event with getting investors to coming in, which we're actually considering doing in the next 9 to 12 months for the first time ever. And we probably would try to sell a minority share of the company. But that's honestly where the real money is made, not in the interim when you're running the day to day.
yeah. And so going back more to the beginning of the story, you did bootstrap all of this. There was no venture capital, there was no investors. It was all from your own pocket. You mentioned you started from that prototype, that one product you wanted for yourself, and then people wanted more. So talk us through that season. I think we've had several people come on who develop products, but I just really want to break down that process because I know that it can feel really big when you have an idea, you have a concept, and where do you even start to bring this to fruition? So maybe break down some of those early steps to bring the product to market.
I will caveat one thing just for a fact check on myself. We didn't raise institutional capital, but my brother, who was on Wall Street at the time, gave me a check for 10,000. At the time, I think my net worth was about 3,100 bucks, 3,500, something like that. And he made me put 2 grand of my own money in. So I had, quote, skin in the game. The reason
Smart.
I bring this up, because I speak at some different forums and summits for aspiring entrepreneurs, is talking about equity. At the time, I put no value on the equity because the business was nothing yet. And our numbers in college were 31. That was our football number. So that's how scientific our process was. He got 31% of the company for 10 grand at the very beginning. And that is a lesson. Now, he's a family member. So at least it's my own family. But for the people that are going to be raising capital, hold on to that equity like it's worth something. And depending on where you are on the risk continuum, you might want to consider just walking down to your local bank. I could have easily got a loan for 10 grand, no problem. But it seemed a lot easier. Oh, this isn't worth anything anyway. So let me get 10 grand from my brother.
Mm.
I'm regretting that significantly right now. So I just think it's something worth calling out for anyone that eventually will raise money or already has and is going to do another round. Hold on to that equity, because at a time when you don't think it's valuable, it can really turn into something significant, and then you're going to be kicking yourself.
Best investment of his life. Everybody's listening
Oh my
like,
God.
where
Yeah.
else can I give someone 10 grand for
Yes. And then
31%?
my other brother, because my mom was like, oh, well, hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but she felt bad that I didn't include my other brother. So he bought in for 6 grand for 10%, 6 grand.
Oh
So
man.
lesson learned to everyone, do not give away equity, because they're getting a 5,000,000% X on that at the moment. And it's all good. It's my
My
family.
gosh.
So if it helps them and their kids and their, I'm okay with it. I'm sleeping fine at night.
Sure. Yeah, but that is, I mean, watch Shark Tank, right? I think you can learn a lot from it. A couple episodes of Shark Tank to understand valuation and equity. And I remember watching that early on and not understanding a thing about business and being like, why is that worth it for them? Or why are they saying no? It's money, it's something that they're giving them. And they have that longer term picture to say, what am I willing to sacrifice? Because I know, when you believe in your thing, and I doubt you didn't believe in it, you probably just had no concept. And that was going to be another question is where you are now, could you even imagine when you started that it would become this? Did you have that entrepreneurial bug and that desire to have a multi-million-dollar company? Or was it just something that because you had a deep desire to serve people or you started to have fun with it, that's kind of what led to its growth being so massive?
I don't think I could have ever imagined in a million years what it would become. I always have had the entrepreneurial bug, going back to when I was little, running a lawn mowing business, walking around the neighborhood with a lawnmower, convincing people to let me mow their lawn, which turned into a significant little business by the time I was in college. And then the business that I already mentioned, I always had the itch to kind of
Yeah.
run my own business, but I had no aspirations of what it would become. I think for Mallory and I, we were just always super competitive and very type A. So naturally, we wanted to keep raising the bar, because you just compete. You always want to make it better, and you don't really realize what's happening. Maybe I'm still to that point, and then eventually you kind of step back and go, "Oh wow, this is actually legitimate." Yeah, I think it's in your DNA, in your blood. And for the people I get a lot of people that are on the fence of whether, hey, I have this 9 to 5, it's comfortable, but I had this idea, like, what should I do? And I always tell people, hey, if it's one of those things that's making you stare at the ceiling every night and you can't turn it off, um, that's probably maybe a nudge to consider giving it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
However, I also think where you're at in your life matters. And so I speak to a lot of transitioning veterans about this, because a lot of them get out and they want to start their own business. And I say, hey, fellas, if you're 45 and you're married with 3 kids and your wife just did the you being deployed gone all the time for 20 some years, now might not be the time to start that coffee business that you've been thinking of forever in a saturated market where everyone's trying it. You know what I mean? Getting
Yeah.
a 9 to 5 might be an okay path. Don't hate on the 9 to 5. Or maybe it's going to be a side hustle, but realize you're going to be sacrificing time now because you're going to work a 9 to 5, and then this is going to take up every waking hour. And what will that do for your family dynamic for 3 kids that have been wanting dad home for the last 20 years? There's a lot of things to consider. However, if you're 25 and single, take every risk on earth, because you can recover really easily. You're agile, you're mobile. There's not people depending on you yet. So I think these are just things people should consider when they're kicking around. Oh, should I give this a shot or not? I am very tolerant to risk. I love taking risk, but when there's humans, especially little humans, relying on you and need your financial support, but also your time and love, that also I think needs to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad that you said that. I work with a lot of women who they're the main caregivers, and so it's different circumstances, but same thing. There has to be a level of sustainability or just like real serious expectation. So you're not going to think, oh, I can totally do it all. And you have to look at what are you currently able to carry and how can you actually increase that realistically, not just because you think the motivation will just carry you through it. There's going to be sacrifice somewhere. And so deciding where your not even just risk tolerance is, but your, I guess, like your time leverage, the amount that you're willing to actually dedicate. And what I've seen is it's not just the time on the calendar, it's the energy output. And like you said, the relationships that still need nurturing. So even if you have the time, how are you going to show up for those kids? How are you going to show up for the 9 to 5 if you're depleting? So we're not saying it's not possible. We're just saying have some really good perspective on what it's going to really take. Because for you, what did that look like those years that you were in the service? What were you able to contribute? What was the presence like? How did you guys keep growing?
My active duty job was very demanding. It was stressful. It was dangerous. And I'm going all over the country and, on deployments, of course, overseas. So Mallory and I had to communicate a lot, obviously, over the phone. And I would do all day of training. I'd get back to my hotel. I'm exhausted. And we'd have a couple hours of stuff to talk about, supply chain. Oh, this attorney, this thing just came in. All the stuff that you have to deal with when it's just two of you. And that was very difficult because the other guys would get to go back to the room and eat and go to bed and get an 8-hour sleep. And I'd be up till 1 a.m. doing emails with Mal and suppliers and then having to get up at 5 and start it all over again. So it's definitely a sacrifice that you make. Additionally, when I would finally get home with Mallory, 99% of our time was on the business. And that puts stress on your relationship. Now, we were all in on it. It wasn't like one of us wanted to work and the other one was like, oh, let's go on vacation. We were so type A competitive that it didn't even have to be discussed. And I was given this example the other day on our podcast. It was like we would go to Hawaii for vacation like once a year. It was like right before my deployments. And we would get up at 4:30 in the morning so we could be on business hours back on the East Coast. Because that's where it's a 5-hour time difference, and we would work till like noon every day. And then there was a Starbucks right down the road that opened at 5, so we'd walk in and we'd be there till noon, and then we would start our vacation day, right? And that was just SOP for us. And in hindsight, that's crazy. But in the moment, you're going to bed 8 o'clock at night on vacation because you got to get up at 4:30 to start doing emails so you're able to communicate with your employees on the East Coast. That was just what we did. But that doesn't come without a cost because eventually that can exhaust relationships. You're never actually recharging your personal battery when you're doing that on vacation. Most people hopefully will come back rested and refreshed on vacation with renewed spirit. And we were working the whole time, right? Even during the day when we're supposed to be off, we were still doing emails and stuff. So that's just, unfortunately, I think that's what it takes though. And Mal and I joke about it now. It's like, that probably would have helped our marriage if we didn't do that. But Born Primitive wouldn't be what it was if we didn't have that kind of maniacal, if that's even a word, approach to what we were doing, and that obsessive approach. You got to be careful what you wish for a little bit. It's probably going to come with some collateral damage, but in my mind, if you want to be exceptional in anything, you're going to need to do things and you're going to be a little bit misunderstood. You know what I mean? And most people won't be able to relate. Oh, that's crazy. You're on vacation. Why are you getting up at 4:30 in the morning? That makes no sense. You're supposed to be recharging. I'm trying to be different and I'm trying to build something exceptional. And that's what we thought it took in the moment.
Yeah. And it's always easier to say, oh, I understand now. It could have maybe been a little bit more balanced, but you're in it and there's no convincing. It's like a kid or a dog with a bone. There is no convincing them that there's any way to put that down when the vision is so clear and you're so driven and motivated. And like you said, the hyper competitiveness. And so I will second that. I think Hawaii is the best vacation spot for entrepreneurs because of the time zone difference, because nothing happens at night anyway in Hawaii. Like everything shuts down. It gets dark earlier. I love going there for vacation and still having some work time because you feel on top of the world. You're like, look at me getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and having the day's work done and then still going and chilling on the beach. It's ideal. So I support that. I think yes, you could have relaxed a little more, but at least you're on vacation. You're in a beautiful place on the beach. It's a win. Okay, so let's go back to maybe you went from developing that product, starting to sell. What did the scaling look like? Where did you, because you had, yes, the little bit of capital from your brothers, what was the money spent on? What did it look as you started to introduce this, and how did you get those first sales?
I think the initial money was sent on the website and the first order, and that with maybe $2,000 left over for whatever we're going to need it for. From that point forward, the orders fueled the next order, which fueled the next order, which fueled the next order, right? It was all word of mouth in the beginning in the Olympic weightlifting community, which was pretty fun. I remember you used to get like a PayPal ding on your phone when you get a sale. You'd get 2 a day, but you'd hear that little cha-ching and it was the coolest noise ever. Eventually I had to turn that feature off because it was a little too frequent. Good problem to have. But I remember the early excitement of that it's actually a real thing. Like people are actually ordering this product that a couple months ago didn't exist. But yeah, so it was all self-funded, and then just that evolved into I realized we were pigeonholing ourselves with just one product. So we
Mm.
actually reincorporated the name and made it Born Primitive because I wanted to be able to have, a blank canvas to pursue any type of product in the future, not just this super niche thing. It's like even if you steal 100% of the market's still not that big, and you could already
Hmm.
see the plateau right there. And it's so um fortunately we had the foresight to do that, and then Mal started to realize there was some opportunity in the like performance cut and sew. So we started doing women's booty shorts and leggings and sports bras and men's like board shorts and things like that were a little bit more like high end, not just like screen printing t-shirts and hoodies and stuff. And I think that was the light bulb moment. I remember she developed a sports bra that was was very well received. And we went to the CrossFit games and we sold all 200 of them in a day and a half. You could see the customer reaction because we had a little changing room and girls were trying them on and be like, oh my God, this is perfect. I would say that was a point where we realized, okay, we need to pivot into performance cut and sew workout apparel. And that's where the money is. And it just took off from there.
Mm.
And product innovation, we didn't have a product team. So it was just us finding things on shelves that we thought were cool, but hey, we want to make this modification. We like this fabric, but we like the sizing on this one. And you just piece stuff together and just figure it out over time. And that's what really got us rolling was, I would say, that sports bra was a kind of a light bulb moment for us.
Cool. Yeah, because a lot of times as consumers, we can tell you all of the things that we wish existed or all the problems that we have with products. But when you're now uniquely positioned to understand how to source a product, how to have one created, how to bring it to market, and you're then around that focus group that's the ideal customer that's going to buy that product, it's a recipe for success 100% of the time. So you said in the beginning, you were mostly going to trade shows and events and sporting events and things like that where your people were hanging out. And you have the website. So how much was each fueling the revenue?
So it was mainly CrossFit. So we were going to all the
Mm,
CrossFit tournaments. And one thing I'll
got
say
it.
about marketing is if you're starting anything, if the space you're in is super connected, that is a massive advantage. So in CrossFit, we make the joke, just wait 5 minutes, someone's going to tell you they do CrossFit. It's everyone talks about it in the community, maybe to a
Hmm.
fault, but it's very connected. So if you get in with a small crew, eventually the rest of the group's going to find out this new thing because everyone's wearing the same stuff. Like it was very unoriginal as far as like you could see a CrossFitter a mile away because I was one of them, so I could see my own people. That gave us a massive advantage because that space was growing exponentially when we entered. I was competing in CrossFit. I competed at the CrossFit Games. So we were credible because we were one of them. It wasn't like, oh, who's this like fringe brand that isn't a part of us? We were accepted. And that made it very easy in the early years to not really spend any money on marketing other than just going to events, which is
Mm.
hilarious. And in hindsight, I knew nothing about meta ads or anything like that. Like we literally just did it old school. Like we didn't have a marketing budget. We didn't spend anything on marketing other than just the travel costs to go to these things. But it
Wow.
worked because of the space we were in. So I think anyone that was starting something it's really worth studying your audience. Let's say I always think of industries that would be cool to enter. Let's say you're a mom blogger, right? And all the that's like kind of a tight community of like and new moms that are like learning. Oh, here's this new product and this and that, and there seem to be some in that space that are very influential. That would be a space you'd kill because once you're like it's the new product that all the moms use, like you can reach all of them because it's so the viral component of that of women referring other things to their friends who are now new moms. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
well, there's other spaces I'd say, man, I would not touch that because I don't know how it would reach the audience. They're all there, but they're all scattered and there's
Hmm.
no interconnected between them. So we got really lucky that CrossFit had that kind of genetic composition. And had we not been in a space like that, I don't think Born Primitive would have ever worked out because we really didn't have
Mm.
a marketing plan. We were just scrappy and we just got in front of people and just one customer at a time.
Yeah. That's how a lot of successful businesses are built. I think sometimes you can lean too heavily the other way where you're trying to focus too much on marketing and not on product and not even on knowing your customer. And you can spend a lot of time and a lot of money on a fledgling business. And I think with the advent of the internet, with ads, with all of this opportunity we have to grow something online, it can be tempting to think that's the first step when in reality, what you just said, going and actually engaging with an actual human being who would buy your product, even in the virtual space, like even in coaching, there's so many people who are like, oh, I'll go create all of these offers, but they really have absolutely no person that is going to buy them because they've never had a real conversation with a buyer. So I think everyone listening needs to, I don't think we can stress that enough or say that on enough episodes. There's so much value in actual contact, actual conversation, and having those products be used for research, for all of the different components. After you guys, I guess you probably didn't max out on that. It's a growing community too. You know, I've read that that's something really important. You want it to be an audience that's continuing to expand, not one that's necessarily dying off or a fad that's going to go away. So how did you guys start stretching even beyond the CrossFit? I know you mentioned you saw the need, you saw that there was more importance there to reincorporate the business even. So what were those next steps and what was the next season like as you took it bigger and you started to invest in some marketing?
Yeah, I think another pivotal moment was when we started doing ads on Meta. I had a friend that was a teammate of mine in college that owned an ad agency. I knew nothing about advertisements. This is hilarious. This is 5 years in. And I went to him, I was like, hey man, we don't spend any money on marketing, but we've doubled every year for 5 years. I wonder if we did some like Facebook ads, if that would work. Right. So we got introduced to them and we're still with them. And that was a whole new world. I remember they said, hey, you got to spend 10 grand a month minimum and this. And I was like, that's a crazy amount of money. I can't even imagine. And very quickly we were spending 50 grand a month, which at the time seemed crazy because it was so effective in finding new customers. And back then you could like target CrossFit. Like you could just put it in like the ad of like, I want you to target CrossFit people and it would go right to them. It's a lot harder to do that now with iOS 14 and some of the other things that have happened. But those were the early years of Meta where you could acquire a customer for like $5. So we, by luck, were introduced to that. And that allowed us to kind of take it to the next level and reaching people beyond just who we were seeing at events and kind of through, word of mouth within the space.
Yeah.
And then from that, we expanded categories. So we got into like kind of athleisure stuff. So we're doing joggers and things like that were comfortable for the active lifestyle. And then what really got it going is recently, a couple of years ago, we launched our performance shoe, the Savage One, which is a workout shoe that I designed with some shoe engineers. And then we launched a tactical side of our brand, tactical apparel, as well as hunting and outdoor apparel. And those last two were rooted in me being in the military and seeing shortfalls in what we were being given in the military and realizing, man, I have an apparel company. Like eventually I have the resources to potentially solve this need. And since I'm the consumer, I know what the consumer needs because I'm one of them. And that kind of planted that seed. Hey, when I get out of the military, I'm going to launch those parts of the brand too. And that's done really well because I have the in-house expertise to know specifically what they need and the things that were being missed and what we were being issued from our supply departments. That has raised the ceiling on this thing to a whole nother level that you can't imagine. But a lot of it was just kind of natural evolution, right? It started with a pair of compression shorts and now we have 1,600 different products on the site. It wasn't like it was this, grand vision from the beginning. These opportunities would come up as you assess the market, and after risk assessment and quantifying the market and seeing where we could actually differentiate, we just decided to make a play on a couple of them, and it's gone really well.
Cool. That's amazing. So let's talk about some of those mistakes that we addressed in the very beginning that everybody makes, because I know hindsight's always 20/20. We can't go back in time, and you can't even necessarily wish you had done it differently because the very choices you made took you down a different path and you might not have gotten there had you not made those choices. But that being said, yes, we know maybe don't give the equity away like candy to your first investors. What else would you say to someone right now who's like, you know what, I do have an idea. Maybe they've been selling a product a little bit. What are some of the things that looking back you would do a little bit differently in growing the business?
I think from a pure product standpoint, and whether you're just debating launching a new business or an expansion of your company, you need to be brutally honest with like, how does this actually differentiate from the current products in the market? If it's very saturated and yours really isn't that different and these other brands have a foothold, ask yourself the question, why would anyone buy mine versus the ones they're already buying? And how am I even going to reach them? You know what I mean? And if the answer isn't a good answer, like you probably want to shelve it. Right. But if it's better, if it's cheaper, if it's faster, if there's a true differentiator, then that could be a real recipe for success. But don't be overconfident in what you're bringing to the table. That was actually the problem in my first business that failed. I made an inaccurate assessment on the need for that product based on my own personal need, but that personal need did not transcend to the regular customer. And that was being 22 years old. Of course, if I want this, everyone wants it. And it was not the case. So I think that's really important. And we've had to be really methodical in our product expansion of really thinking through that. So when we launched Born Primitive Tactical, I had to say, okay, would anyone actually buy this? But I knew I could design a better tactical pant because I was the guy wearing it for 8 years, and I was the one with all the gripes and complaints of all the shortfalls, right? So that was like, okay, yes, I do pass the sniff test. This will be a superior product to anyone in the market. And over time, it's also a tight knit community similar to CrossFit. Word will get out that this is the pant to wear, and that will take care of itself. So, okay, green light. Same thing with the outdoor stuff. We would get an outdoor loadout of clothing. It was the same idea. I said, we can't move in this stuff. It's not functional. This needs to be high performance stuff. If you're on a mountain for 10 days, like it's critical this stuff works. Okay, I know what we need. We did the same thing. And then same thing with footwear. I'd worn a lot of different types of training shoes over the years, and I thought Nike was missing the mark. I thought Reebok was missing the mark, and I knew what we could make. And the footwear alone has absolutely changed the dynamic of our company. I mean, it's insane. 8 of our top 10 products every day are shoes. So imagine had we not taken the gamble on that, the ceiling on our brand would be a lot lower right now. I would say that would be, I guess, just a lesson that we learned along the way, because of course we did some product launches that kind of failed, and it's because you didn't really assess what is the value proposition of this product. Is it actually there, or is it just something that we think would be cool, but the market is already saturated with the exact same thing?
Yeah, good advice. I think that's a hard pill to swallow for some, to say, yeah, but because I love it is not necessarily reason enough for it to move on, change people's lives, be a successful product to take to market. And that's, again, the benefit of going to those in-person events, getting in front of your customer, trying it out and seeing what is the feedback, what is the actual need. Because if you had tested out the sports bra or the shoes and people were like, no, I'm good, I'm actually satisfied with what I have. Yeah, it would have been a huge waste of capital, time, and energy to even try and solve a problem that didn't exist. I think that's the core of success in business. Solve a problem, not just come up with a fun, fanciful idea, and you'll probably have some cash flow. So with even the product development, that being said, you had the seamstress that sewed that first pair of compression shorts. Talk to me about product quality and how you've been able to maintain that and what that looks like, especially as you're getting into this high performance audience and you're wanting really good quality stuff. Sometimes I think that can scare people away from having a product business. Is how do you even formulate that? Who do you rely on? You're shipping all from overseas. How do you maintain quality control, especially as you grow?
Yeah, that's definitely a beast. In the early days, all it was is I would go on Alibaba.com and copy and paste the same message to 50 suppliers that I thought could make it. And you narrow that down to 5, and they make 5 samples, and then you narrow it down to 2, and then you finally pick the one, and you hope that they're advertising what they say. You also hope you're not going to wire them the money for the order, and then you never hear from them again. That happens. So there is a lot of risk and pitfalls with supply chain, particularly overseas. But there are professionals that act as agents that broker that for you. You do pay a premium for it. So that's something if someone's considering getting into, that might be something you consider. I think we got really lucky that I was able to find a few really reputable suppliers that gave us a chance on our smaller orders, even though the business wasn't big at the time. We have so much relationship equity with those companies now that if there's ever an issue on quality, they'll just replace the entire order, no questions asked, because they don't want to risk losing our other business because it's so significant. And I think going over there and checking out the facilities and having recourse if something goes wrong, that a lot of that comes down to have the relationship you have with them. Those are all things you need to work through. But in the early years, especially if you're not using one of these brokers, like you are taking on some risk. There's just no doubt about it. I remember our second order, it was our reorder when we ordered. So we ordered 200 units. We sold through. We thought it was the wildest thing ever. So we ordered 500 units. I was at boot camp, and they decided to change the method of the adhesive they were using there was a pad built into the product. So when someone would dry it for the first time, the pad would start to lose its adhesive from the fabric, and it was just falling apart. So, Mallory's getting a hold of me when I'm at boot camp saying, this crazy thing happened. What do we do? Like, the business is over. And we had to work that problem. We actually ended up reaching out to every single person saying we were going to replace it for free. And actually, honestly, a good customer service lesson in that first early days right there. But these are things that can happen, right? So you are taking on some risk. So I would just say do your best to do as much due diligence as you can. There's a lot of really good books on this. So that's what I did. I bought 3 books on Amazon and just read books on sourcing overseas and just the pitfalls and the lingo, even things like MOQ that I didn't know any of the language, and, tried to become fluent in that. So at least I could speak from a position of, okay, this guy maybe knows what he's doing, even though I didn't, but maybe they thought I did. So that would just be my general advice, is just get a direction of travel, try to vet some people. A lot of them will be very easy to filter out right from the beginning. And if you need to bring on a professional that will broker it, though, they're going to charge you a fee. But a lot of them have those relationships with those different places, depending on what you're making, of course. and they can make life a lot easier for you in the beginning.
Cool. Yeah, good advice. So you mentioned customer service, how this was a great customer service lesson for you, replacing all of those pairs. Talk to me about what you guys have done for maintaining customers, to keep customers happy, what incentives you've had, what lessons you've learned along the way with that, with treating your customers really well so you have those repeat orders.
Well, it seems simple and basic, but really it's just treat the customer like they're a human and take care of them. Unless it's some outrageous grievance that's just ridiculous, we tend to side with, okay, we'll take care of you. Now, people can take advantage of that. And if there's an exchange window and it's been, we'll get some people that have had something for 8 months and they're like, oh, I want to exchange this. And we're like, what? You've worn this 15 times. So there is a line there, and you do have to set that line because otherwise people will just walk all over you. But just, overdoing it with the customer service experience. And one thing I'll call out is sometimes if you have something that happens, let's say you have a 1,000-unit order and there's something wrong that you didn't pick up and they all went out and were purchased, and then there's this major recall issue. Those can actually turn into your best customer loyalty moments. There's only been a few of those over the 11 years. Every time it happens, I remind the team, hey, this is actually an incredible opportunity because we're going to over deliver on how we respond to this. And they're going to go, wow, okay, they made an honest mistake. They were transparent and they totally took care of us. So usually that would be in the form of, we would email every person that bought that and we'd say, hey, a small percentage of these might have this issue. We've been informed of it. So we've already ordered a replacement. No action required, but every one of you will be getting a brand new one in 10 weeks. In addition to that, everyone's getting a $75 gift card as a kind of an apology. And we just wanted to make it right. And we appreciate your loyalty to our family-owned business, right? You can't imagine what something like that does for just a regular person. It's like, wow, this isn't some giant corporation. These are actually real people on the back end. Now you got them for life. You know what I mean? I don't think from that we got a single negative response. And that's what we did with the first recall. We literally emailed every person and said, hey, this might happen if you dry it on high heat. We hope you don't dry it on high heat, but if you accidentally do, there's going to be one in the mail in 10 weeks and it'll be a brand new one. And then you can dry it however you want. So those were the early years of, okay, you're building a base of loyal customers. That's how you do it. And so now our customer service agents, they're all rock stars and they all treat our customers like that. And that's the standard.
Cool. Well, and it also shows, as you think about things like that, why maybe it took a little while to be profitable, take a paycheck from that. Because when you talk about reinvesting 100% back into the business, there's all these variables that you can't necessarily plan on. And so, yes, your supplier might have worked with you really well. Maybe it wasn't a huge cost output, but even offering the gift card or offering more is still something you kind of want to plan on to offset that profitability that you're going to have. And so I think business owners need to remember that. You almost need to plan for everything going wrong and be excited when everything goes right and you have a great month or you have a great quarter. And that way you're not caught off guard when you're like, wait a minute. I mean, I did a product-driven business on Amazon for a very short minute because it was that failure to recognize we have to reinvest. We can't just start living on this money. And it was unrealistic to think, oh, we sold out of a product. Cool. Now we're making $5,000 a month. It was like, no, you haven't made a dime because you have to reinvest. You have to deal with returns, all of those things you need to factor in when you have that physical product business. Did you guys?
Sounds so right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always joke, if I ever do another business, I'm going to do a service business. It would be so nice. You send the customer the invoice, they pay, and it's done. You don't have to buy something to, you know what I mean, to get the next, I need to do that. But for now, we are deep in product, and that's where it's starting to use lines of credit and things like that really become very relevant because you can leverage debt to buy stuff and free up cash in the moment. So that's maybe for another conversation, but I feel your pain there. You're not actually making that $5,000 that you think you are.
Yep. I would love to actually hear just maybe a brief synopsis. We could totally have another conversation about this in this next level that you're in right now. But just talk to people because you mentioned this a little bit. Taking out a loan from the bank might be better because you're not giving bank equity in the company versus having investors. But then where do we look at that line of credit being valuable? How can we see that as, because I've seen this a lot. I'm understanding this is how the rich stay rich and get richer. They're not really using their own money to build their businesses. So maybe just give us a brief synopsis of what that looks like compared to maybe how you did it or how most people do the business without investment.
Yeah, it's really specifically for an inventory type business. The irony, like I've talked about, is if you're growing, you never actually make the money in the moment. I joke with our co-founder, Mallory. I was like, do you realize if we ever decided we're going to end Born Primitive and we're not placing another product order ever again, we would In that 1 year period, we would get $20 million in our bank account that we wouldn't, you know what I mean? Because you're selling whatever's left, but you're not reordering. So it's like the bank account
Mm-hmm.
goes up to this and then it goes down to this and it goes up to this. And it's this yo-yo. I joke, I was like, if we have just wanted to end this right now, we'd make a ton of money. But of course, we're not going to do that. And that's just because of this paradox that we've talked about. Particularly, most probably understand this, but some might not. I know I didn't, is like you can't write off the inventory purchase as an expense until it's sold, which I think is the dumbest thing ever. But if you buy something this year or it's at the end of the year and it's a $2 million purchase, but you made $2 million that year, one would think, oh, well, I made no money. I broke even, so I shouldn't owe anything to Uncle Sam. So Uncle Sam says, no, you made 2 million. You decided to place that inventory order, but that doesn't count yet. So you have this huge income tax liability. So not only do you have to pay for the inventory, you have to pay your income taxes, which eventually become quarterly. So you have to make sure your cash flow projections align with, okay, that March payment is going to be a big one. We got to make sure we have, and then we have 2 product orders that month. Cash management becomes a big thing. That's why having a large line of credit to fund your inventory purchases can mitigate a lot of that. Now, you can't go crazy with it. You can't just be lawless and draw on whatever you want, but that might make owners to be able to pull a little bit more money from the business in the moment, as long as it's within reason. And that's actually
Mm-hmm.
something we've been very conservative on since we started, but something I think at the end of this year, we're going to do much differently, because typically we'll do an owner distribution, but most of it is typically to cover our income tax liability. So you don't actually make that money because it goes in your bank account, and then a month later, it's going out to Uncle Sam. And then the rest would be used for the next batch of inventory. So we're like, man, we had an incredible year, but it would have been nice to get a little, had we drawn on our line to do that next inventory purchase, we could have taken that difference and done that as a distribution. So I think it's just something people should look at. Talk to your bank. There's inventory lines of credit you can do where they leverage your actually inventory value. There's regular lines of credit. There's a lot of ways you can do it. And be careful. They're probably going to make you personally guarantee it. I know mine's on there, so be smart about it, because they'll come after your house if you screw that up. But it absolutely can free up your ability, and not just inventory. If you have a big marketing thing you want to, and you're super bullish on it, you can put it towards that and really anything you want to help grow the business. But eventually, as an owner, you're going to want to make some money on it, right? Use the bank to put away your own money and hopefully elevate your lifestyle a little bit with your family, put some away for savings and all the good stuff that comes with hopefully sound financial management.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. It sounds pretty overwhelming when you think about that paradox, but I'm glad that there are some ways to offset it and find those ways to become profitable as an owner, because nobody wants to build a business that's worth $20 million that you don't get the payout until you close the business down, right? We want to find those ways to actually enjoy the fruits of our labor. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to address that for people. Maybe it's not an option early on because you can't really personally guarantee, you don't have numbers enough to understand what the projections are. But somewhere along the line, looking into that as an option just to help free up a little bit more of that capital is super, super smart. Bear, this has been so fun to hear your story, how you've built your business, all the lessons learned along the way. I'm sure we could go into like dozens and dozens more of what you would want to share with somebody who's aspiring to do similar business or just any business. Where can people go to keep connecting with you, keep watching your evolution?
Our company's at Born Primitive on the website, Instagram, all the good stuff. I'm at Bear Handlon. I don't put much business stuff. I have some podcast clips on there too that we'll do stuff there. And then I'm on LinkedIn too. So any of those places, but the Born Primitive page has a ton of our stuff on there too. So that's where you can find me, and wish everyone the best in their pursuits. It's definitely not for everyone, because we know, I think 7% success rate in startups.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to do it or you're in the mix right now, statistically, the odds are against us, but I think it's a calling. Not everyone's wired for it. And if someone's already doing it, that's good news, because you probably do have that DNA in you to get it done. So be kind to yourself, show yourself some grace, realize that it does take time. It might be 5-6 years before you have anything to show for it. Be in persistence. But that's the dilemma, because you also don't want to waste 10 years of your life waiting for something to happen that might never happen. So you need to be realistic with yourself on, is this actually making traction? Is it progressing? Am I different? Am I unique? Am I providing something of actual value, or is that in my head and maybe it's a little bit of ego attached to it? These are the dilemmas we face when we're trying to build something that doesn't exist prior to that little idea in your head.
Yeah, yep, you're so right. You summed that up perfectly. I think just be realistic, look at what's happening, look what's working, because 5-6 years in, you were making money, even if you weren't profitable. You could see there was a need, you could see you were filling it. So I just think you have to be really vulnerable, look at it from a bird's eye view and not from your own lens. We get so close to things we can't even see it sometimes. So yeah, beautiful advice. Thank you again for everything that you've shared with our listeners. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.